Welcome back, everyone, to Merge Conflict, your weekly developer podcast. Thanks to all of our new listeners, I guess viewers, Frank, on our YouTube. I don't know if you know, we have a youtube.com/@mergeconflict.fm. You can see our faces.
I'm subscribed. Are you subscribed? I get to see your face mostly. We've had this discussion. It's mostly your face, but that's a good thing. You're very YouTube friendly.
I've been officially replacing the default thumbnail that they pick, which for some reason happens to be my face usually. Maybe because I open the show usually with actual artwork, which has an episode number on them, and then some clickbait image that's kind of related to the podcast, but also not at all. So that's cool. Yeah,
some big reaction shot. We really should up our YouTube game and get more reaction shots. But thank you, everyone, for subscribing along with me. James, are you subscribed?
I am subscribed. I am heavily subscribed. I'm a big fan of the pod. And being subscribed also makes sure when I wake up on Monday morning that I actually put out the podcast, because it'll be in my YouTube feed. Because I watch way too much YouTube. That is for sure. So.
Yeah, I actually canceled Netflix because I just decided I just watch YouTube as entertainment now. So, you know, there's our non-tech topic of the week, canceling Netflix. Look at me. I'm such a millennial, whatever I am.
Game changer. We canceled Disney Plus, although I am a little bit upset because Severance, obviously season 2 will come out in January or something. So I've
literally paid for a year of Apple TV Plus whatever, waiting for Severance to come out because I'm like, maybe it'll be this month. No. Maybe it'll be this month. Nope. No. I think it's going to be January, February. It's a while.
Yeah, it's a while. So I'd already canceled, and we'll give it back. Yeah, we still have Netflix. We still have Hulu. I do not have YouTube anymore, and we're trying to cancel the Sirius XM. Although I don't know, that might be keep it. You know, I don't know, it's hard to say.
You're living that MP3 player life. You don't need radio. You don't need streaming services. You just got MP3 files that fell off the back of a truck to put onto a little SD card.
Fun fact is also radio is free. I don't know if you know about that, but you can just turn on the radio and tune in.
There are so many ads. I listen to the radio all the time. I listen to King Classic Radio because I guess I'm an old man or something. And it's all ads. It's just ads. Yeah. It's not free. We're the customer.
We're always the customer because we're listening. We tuned in, Frank. Yeah, that's interesting about Netflix. We've talked about it a bit here and there, but there's some good reality TV on there. It's like, and same with Hulu. There's really not that much, but then it's like every once in a while, there's a bunch of HGTV.
Yeah. But you know what? Most shows stick around, so in 10 years, I'll subscribe to Netflix again and just watch all of them. Just binge watch. Watch the 2020s.
Yeah, you could, like, a lot of people alternate, you know what I mean, between the different ones. Say, okay, like, for the first 6 months, I'll do Hulu. Okay, the next 6 months, I'll do, like, Netflix. Yeah. And you just, like, rotate. Because, yeah, they're going to be there when you go. That's fascinating. We should think about it. We'll think about it.
Modern world. Yeah. But that's not our topic this week, is it? We're not an entertainment podcast, even though sometimes I think we should do entertainment episodes just because you and I like movies and I'm a movie podcast.
We can. I want to go see Longlegs, the new Nick Cage horror movie. You heard about that at all?
I'm a little checked out on Nick Cage, but this is Merge Conflict, so I should try it out, I guess.
Nick Cage all day. We'll see. I might go see that. We'll see. No, I used to have a podcast called The Movie Podcast, and I used to review movies, but I don't anymore. But we did recently watch a few movies. We went to the store, got some Blu-rays, and went there. Do you know Redbox went out of business? You know that?
Oh, okay. So is physical media like officially dead then? Was there like a ceremony or something?
They were probably the biggest purchaser of physical media that you can imagine because they had so many kiosks. But I think also Best Buy, they no longer carry Blu-rays or DVDs. I think Target does and a few other places, and Walmart does, but it's hard to say. I think that it'll be sort of a collector's niche type of thing, and like what will happen is it'll minimize the places that are making the discs, and then they'll figure out how to do it cheaper, and then
it's already begun. Like people, it's already become a bit of a niche thing. People buying it, and I think it's already become somewhat cool to buy DVDs again, even though that sounds horrendous. I mean, but I'm talking to someone who uses an MP3 player from the 1990s. So
it's true. I mean, you can go to your local Goodwill, you can get a bunch of Blu-rays. Anyways, let's get back to it. Okay, this is episode 420, which is a 10th episode, which means every 10 episodes we do lightning topics. And today we got 6 of them lined up, kind of. And we also like to hear from you. You can hit us up on YouTube. You can leave comments on this one. Say, hey, what do you want to hear about? We do 5 minutes. If we don't do a whole podcast on it, leave a comment. Let us know what you want to hear. You can write to us. Go to mergeconflict.fm, and you can hit us up on maybe Twitter. We'll talk about that later. But let's get into our first topic, which is a rehash of last week's episode. If you missed it, I talked about setting up a fresh Mac machine for .NET MAUI development and sort of mobile development, desktop development in general. What's the full setup? And Frank, I did it. I went through. I have a whole video on my YouTube. It's 32 minutes long.
30. It's easier than that. Does it really take 32 minutes? I thought it'd be a 10-minute video. I'm just kidding. It takes me 2 days to set up a computer. 32 minutes. Not bad, James.
If you watch my clock on the top right of the video, you'll see that it changes from like noon to like 7 p.m. at some point in the video.
So it's an 8-hour process. Okay.
I went on a hike, but you know what I mean? Like, let's just say I clicked install on Xcode, then I went on a hike. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, so here is my Mac Dev Machine Update 2024 edition. Okay, so .NET, easy to install. .NET Workloads, easy to install.
Yep.
Visual Studio Code.
Take a while.
No.
I have a slow space-based technology internet, a little slow on my side, but fine. Good for you and your fast internet.
I would say the workloads today, I was installing some workloads, like I needed to install Mac OS and tvOS for one of my NuGet packages, and it felt like when I did the MAUI workload install, it was like really quick, because I think it was like, it knows like all the dependencies, but I think when I install like Mac OS or tvOS, It's like doing like weird transitive, like weird stuff. I don't know.
The individual platforms are what takes a long time. MAUI is pretty cross-platform. Like MAUI itself is pretty small.
Yeah.
It's all the platform support that just takes forever.
Yeah. I felt like that took a long time. So that one did take a while. I did speed it up. Visual Studio Code, extensions installed, easy peasy. I decided I was going to go down the Xcodes route to install Xcode itself, and that worked great.
Good.
Success.
So that was a blank machine. It had never seen an Xcode before in its life. Okay.
Never seen it, and it's nice to have a little activate button, which will do the Xcode selection for you and set like the paths and stuff automatically. And additionally, what's nice about Xcodes now is, like we talked about, is Xcode has the optional installs of iOS and Vision OS and blah, blah, blah. It also has that too. So you can not only install Xcode, but the individuals.
Wow. So Xcodes, they really need a better name for that app. Allows you to select basically it's the SDKs that you're downloading. Oh, that's real nice. Excellent. That's real nice. I should try hard and figure out why the heck my machine hates that app.
Yeah. And there's some newer versions that are out there as well that they just have been releasing. So maybe one of the newer versions will fix that for you. But I had zero problems doing it, logged right in, 2-factor auth, boom, good to go.
Excellent.
Yeah. So
great.
I do think that one thing to be aware about if you go around about that route is that, you know, when you install the version of Xcode, it has the version appended in the .app. So like be aware of the length of, or the location name. Fine, you know, but just good to be aware, because if you download from the App Store, it's always called Xcode.app, you know.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I have a million scripts that hard code the Xcode path that break when you do it that version specific way. It's just life. There are better ways you can use command line tools to actually query Xcode select and actually ask it, where is the SDK? What is the currently selected one? All that good stuff. So I should update all my scripts, but it's fine. It's fine. I think it is better with the version number attached to it anyway. Kind of wish Apple did it. But you couldn't get up to the current beta version because you need the newest Mac beta version to get the newest Xcode beta version. Is that right? Did you try that out?
They were listed in there. However, I did read that there apparently might be an issue right now getting the optional SDKs under the hood because Apple changed maybe the APIs. All this stuff with the third-party apps are always a little bit hacky per se. So, and Apple doesn't like to let people do stuff, but it's out there into the ether. You know what I mean? It's out there.
Yeah. Well, okay. Those sound like excellent updates, and I think I'll double down and try to get it working for myself.
And that was good. And then I installed Android Studio, Koala. Cute name. That's the name of it, the version, Koala.
Okay. Sure. Version 40. What are we up to on there?
I had Koala, at least. And so that went pretty good. The install's gotten a lot better. And the nice thing is that you can launch, it's kind of like Visual Studio where you kind of like launch the shell and then you don't have to launch the whole thing or whatever. But there's a little pop-up and then you can just go into the SDK manager. It's a little tricky because API 35 is out, but the current .NET 8 build of Xamarin, .NET for Android, .NET MAUI supports API 34 and the 34 build tool. So you have to like click a few like show all options to know what to get the older versions because Android Studio doesn't make that easy, which is kind of odd in my opinion, but I figured it out. And the nice thing is that Visual Studio Code and the MAUI extension has like when you open the project, it runs a bunch of validation scripts and you can rerun them. And it literally gives you like an X or a check mark in ASCII if you have things configured or not and what you need to get. And it's really helpful. So all in all, took a little bit more time. I mean, 32-minute video with things really fast forwarded for like, no one wants to watch me install Xcode, but it's all been running. Frank is doing it. It's happening. Emulators, all the stuff. It's all good. Yeah, I'm happy.
I tell you, it's that stupid Android. Like Xcode takes forever to install, but it just works once it's installed. It's that Android stuff that takes me forever. And I had that same battle with the version numbers. It's gotten to the point where I just refer to my CI/CD scripts. I'm like, okay, what version of whatever do I need for this and all that?
Yeah.
Because it gets a little bit confusing because I still have some apps on Xamarin. Don't shoot me. I'm trying. I'm upgrading. And they require a different Android version than the .NET one. And I think the .NET one's changed between .NET 7 or .NET 8. Somewhere in there, I got very confused. But yeah, it was basically, what did I set everything? I thought I set everything to 34, but you're up to 35?
It's on. Well, I had to go download 34, so 34 should be the correct number. But 35, I think 35 will be supported in .NET 9, or it's in the preview.
Sure.
Maybe. I don't know if they'll backport it, but it's fine. Anyways, that brings us to Frank's complaint of the day.
Complaint of the day. You just gave Visual Studio Code a compliment.
Oh yeah.
And now I want to insult it. And now I want to say bad things about it. Look. We all love VS Code. Let's just put that out there. I'm not ragging on the editor. I am. I'm not ragging on the team a little bit. But here's the thing. It went from a text editor that was very simple to use to a full-blown IDE with a million pop-ups. But I'm not going to complain about that. That's fine.
Okay.
Because always in VS Code, the editor was good. Somehow the quality, they got the quality control team working hard on that editor. Always a good editor. But things have gotten a little bit crazy in the year 2024. I have IntelliSense. I have VS Code extensions that are doing like little type analysis that like to pop up little windows. I have Copilot that likes to pop up little windows. I have helpful little code refactors that like to put a little icon next to my cursor all the time telling me there are other pop-ups I can view should I want to go see a pop-up. And someone on Twitter, this just came up that, my goodness, VS Code is getting noisy these days. You can't type 2 letters without at least 2 pop-ups coming up these days. And by pop-ups, I don't mean the modal ones that they kind of hide in the lower right now and they're not supposed to distract you. I mean actual pop-ups that appear like next to the cursor. They go away nice and easily. Obviously, you can press the escape key and they go away. But I was just noticing that my typing pattern these days has become letter, escape, and you just keep hitting the right number of escapes until you get to the level of the completion that you want. And then you've got to try to remember at that point, is it tab to accept that completion or enter to accept that completion? Because if it's Copilot, it's tab. If it's anything else, it's enter. You just got to remember those. Yeah. It's hard to remember sometimes in the heat of the moment when you're just trying to write some code and you're hitting too many escapes. So Frank's complaint of the day, and thank you, James, for letting me vent, is there's just way too many things trying to help me code. And I think the UIs we have is functional. We can certainly get our jobs done and everything, but I think we all need to take a step back. And I'm a little bit talking to the people at VS Code because it's your editor and we all can't do this about it. And you got to somehow do something because it's getting to be way too many options in my code completion windows. And that's it. Frank's complaint over.
You know what I haven't taken advantage of that I think I need to talk to Dawn on my team. She focused on Python in VS Code, and she mentioned something about profiles, and it didn't hit me until just now. Is there's this concept, and it's unlike any other IDE because IDEs don't have this, but in Visual Studio you just open up your project and it's boom, it's good. Like Visual Studio Code, you have like 1,000 extensions. You're just installing everything under the sun because you're doing a whole everything. It's very polyglot, right? Which just means you work on a lot of different projects, sometimes together, sometimes not. Like sometimes I'm jumping between doing .NET MAUI stuff, but then sometimes I'm doing like ASP.NET Core stuff with like Docker, and then sometimes I'm doing Python stuff. One thing I don't take advantage of, I need to research more about, is Visual Studio Code profiles. And I think when I think of the word profile, I'm thinking about like logging into a profile. I don't think that's the case. I think it is a developer profile. Like this is my .NET MAUI profile. Like, hey, launch VS Code in .NET MAUI mode. So you could say, hey, when I'm doing .NET MAUI work, actually don't boot up all this other junk that I'm not going to use.
Oh yeah,
do this. And so I think if you are doing a lot of work in VS Code, it might be worth looking at profiles and say, okay, here's what I actually want to have installed, because you have all those extensions that sort of get in the way. Not that it might still not get in the way, but it might be a way of saying, okay, hey, I'm actually just working on, JavaScript stuff right now. Here's my JavaScript profile. So I think that's something to look into. I don't know if that solves your exact problem, but I was just thinking about that. I was like, because there is a log into this thing and back up your settings. But I was like, you know what? There's profiles I've only ever used the default profile, which is like install everything under the sun. So when you open VS Code, you're like, oh, all the extensions are booting up. But it's like, why did I just boot up Docker when I'm doing .NET MAUI work? It doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? So,
love it. I will definitely look into it. I think I have run into it before, and I'm like, that seems complicated, and then I ignored it. But now that you've brought it up, that does sound like something I'll check into, especially because my current system I use is when you have a VS Code, not the project, the .VS Code directory, the hidden directory. You can put settings in that, and you can disable extensions. And so I have these magic files that I just copy around from project to project where because I have some nasty extensions. I have this CMake extension that just treats every project like it's a C++ project. It's nasty. It takes over the whole editor. I have one for SB IoT development. Again, nasty. It just like takes over the whole editor. So I'm always disabling those extensions. So that would definitely be helpful if I didn't have to just copy around this file, but come up with profiles. And we'll look into that.
And I wonder if the profiles also let you do like customizations to the IDE. So saying like, hey, I'm doing IoT work, that one's pink. Like, oh, I'm doing MAUI work, that one's purple. Like, you know what I mean? Like that. So visually you can say, oh, this is my project that I'm working on.
Yeah.
Boom.
Okay, I like it. It still doesn't solve the code completion one because you brought up Python. And Python is one of the worst ones because I have linters running. I have type checkers running, the built-in Python interpreter, Copilot, and I feel like there's another one that's just IPython. The interpretive Python has its own little set of extensions. So I have these like 5 extensions fighting over what to display in the editor. Anyway, I'm not going to rant about that anymore. I appreciate you all listening. Thank you.
There you go. Well, all right. Well, next topic, which I do these in 5 minutes-ish or so, is I have a question for Frank, which is, how many tops is too many tops? Because if we recall from my Copilot Plus PC, 45 tops is the tops to tops, which were our ARM-based brand new Snapdragon. However, Frank, what if I told you that, as we said previously, x86 is back, baby? Because HP is releasing an AMD-based AI PC with 55 tops.
55 tops. You didn't let me guess. I wanted to guess.
No, you don't get to guess. This is Merge Conflict. You don't get to guess.
Yes.
I'm on a roll. I get so excited, Frank. You can't stop me. If you're watching on YouTube, Frank was like, let me talk. And I was like, no, Frank, I'm going to do my pitch. And here it is. Boom. 55 tops. That's a lot of tops.
It does sound like a lot of tops. Great. I still wanted an answer to I didn't do any homework after that episode. I posed a big question. Are we getting unified memory along with all these tops? Because tops are great. And if you're not keeping up with James here, I barely am. Teraflops, Terra floating point operations, teraflops, tops, terrible name. That sounds like a great number. 55. That's bigger than the 40 something I believe we were quoting on the other machines. So that's a number that starts with 5 is bigger than the number that starts with 4. So rad. I have no idea what that means in terms of actual performance, because I train neural networks all the time, but they never report the tops that they're using.
Yeah, I guess the real question I have for you is, there's a big push in ARM from both Apple. Obviously, we've seen it on the Windows side of things now with Snapdragon and ARM back and forth. And one of the cases for this was that, but you still need, we're saying x86, so it's really x64, right? They're the same, but you'll see them both back and forth. But 164-bit. Why is x86 not x32? Because it would be 32-bit.
This is political because Intel didn't invent it. Intel was jumping to Itanium to be their 64-bit processor, so they didn't have a 64-bit x86 processor out there. And so AMD came out with kind of the first 64-bit Intel processor. And I don't know the full history, so please write in, but it's vaguely along the lines of Intel didn't have a commercial 64-bit x86 processor out there, but AMD did. So when Intel finally did release theirs, they're not going to call it an AMD 64 architecture, which some people do. So we called it x64. So that's why we lost the 86 moniker. A little bit sad. ARM is doing well because it's not owned by one company, and obviously the Intel architecture is not owned by one company anymore either. But more people have licensed the ARM architecture. That's why it's becoming so popular. It's just an architecture you can go and purchase. But RISC-V, whatever you want to call it, is coming out also. And other architectures are coming out. And Intel architecture is not going anywhere. There are a billion computers out there running it, and Intel's still in business. They're going to keep making it, and they're going to find ways to make it efficient because all architectures are overly gross. So the one big thing, the reason I was shaking my head when you were describing it is x64 does have the big drawback that it also has to implement x86. It has to implement the 32-bit processor too, and it's a really gross, disgusting instruction set, that old-fashioned one, big CISC instruction set. x64 is a very nice instruction set. It's very interesting, very pretty, nice to implement, but they have the disadvantage of having to support the old junk.
That's true, and if I am correct, you'd have to correct me on the Mac, because on iOS, they're only ARM64 processors. Yeah. And I remember we went through a big ARM32 to ARM64 conversion when Apple required ARM64 and only. When we make Mac apps now for M1, was it only ever ARM64 then that we need to support on the Mac?
Yes. On Mac, you still make a fat binary that includes the Intel and the ARM64, but you want to include both. I don't. I should. But stupid Rosetta is so good. I just haven't had such a motive to do it. But
It's true.
yeah, it's just ARM64. Technically, you can get into details ARM64E and things like that. There are details, and you can query what exact kind of processor you're running on, so you can use special instructions, but very few people do that. So
it's the same on Windows. Like when you bundle up a Windows application, at least like modern ones, like you just .NET application, you just say like, oh, I want x86, x64, ARM. It's like checkboxes. It just automatically puts in the fat MSIX. Awesome. Okay, well, more tops, all the tops all day. I'm still waiting for my Snapdragon developer kit. So Qualcomm, get on it. I haven't heard anything. They said July. So hey, it's midway through July. So let's get on it. I want a new computer. All right, let's get to it. On new computers, .NET 9, Preview 6 came out recently. This is July. .NET 7 will be out. RC will be out. It comes out in November, blah, blah, blah. All the things. With that, we got new C# stuff, C# 13, great blog post by Kathleen. And then from the .NET team, we got Preview 6, a bunch of things. Frank, any highlights for you that you would want to be checking out, installing the previews?
C# 13. I think every time there's a new version of C#, I'm like, how is it up to 13 already? I just can't keep up. But I do keep up because you have to keep up with C# 13 because I love languages. They're interesting. A lot of low-level performance improvements. Did you know, James, it's faster to decrement the loop indexing variable than it is to increment the loop indexing variable?
I did not know that.
Speaking of ugly, gross computer architectures, what a fun little fact.
Wow.
So it turns out in the new C# compiler, they're going to try to decrement instead of increment. That sounds like the dumbest, silliest thing, but I love that kind of stuff because I like to write compilers too. And as a compiler person, I'm like, wow, that's pretty bold. They've decided to do that optimization path. Now, honestly, I've seen LLVM doing these kinds of optimizations for a long time, but it's still cute to see like the C# compiler just doing it itself also. It's just like, we're just going to decrement the variable. It's the most micro optimization on the planet, but I love it. I love those kinds of things.
I do think that a lot of when you look through the release notes and like the different what's new, like I think in .NET 9 there does seem to be a lot of these low level optimizations and maybe things that you don't even realize are there. I think in C# 13, I am definitely the feature that Kathleen talks about the most and I've seen the most is the param collections. I don't really even like the name params, but param collections at least. But think of it like this. Basically, they said, hey, before, if you want to use params, it just worked with like arrays.
Arrays.
That's it. That's all you get. Now, this params everything. Like you got lists, you got IEnumerable, you got read-only spans, whatever. Just params it all. And to me, that's great because there's a bunch of other helper link methods or string methods that return IEnumerables, do other stuff. It just params it all. That sounds great. And another one that I think is really great too is like the lock object. Like you think about it, I lock everything with an object. But now there's actually an object called lock. Lock it. To lock the lock. Lock in the lock. To lock the lock. Frank, lock it up.
It's not even an object, James. It's a struct. It's a ref struct, I believe. So it's not even an object. Lock things are a little close to home for me. I've worked on the concurrency parts of .NET, like working out Microsoft on the concurrency parts of .NET. And here's the thing. James, let me tell you a little secret in .NET. Number one, just fun fact. This isn't the secret. This is just a fun fact. Did you know you can lock any object?
Yes.
And
anything.
Object.
Yeah, just do it.
Lock it.
Yeah, do it.
Oop. It's a little weird, funny design choice, but that's possible. It's just because of memory barriers. It's just a fallout of how the runtime works and the garbage collector works. It's just a free feature. Ignore it. Whatever. You can lock any object. Here's the little secret though. That's basically the fastest lock in all of .NET. There are other lock classes. There's reader-writer lock. There's whatever. There's semaphore. There's
slim.
There's the slim ones. Always use the slim ones. Everyone, please use the slim ones. Unless you're running on Windows NT, please use the slim ones. But good old locking an object was always the fastest. It actually implemented a monitor. Every object actually implemented a monitor. But they've changed that. We're living in a brave new .NET 9 C# 13 world, and there's now a lock refstruct thing that you can use instead of a lock. I don't know. I have to run my own performance things. I'm not fully understanding from the blog post why I would do this over the normal lock. They both seem pretty efficient to me. I know from my own personal experience that lock is very efficient. So I'll be curious to find out what scenarios this is best for.
I think you still use lock, but now instead of locking an object, you lock a lock.
Yeah, sorry. So you're still using the lock syntax, but that's a C# trick. You could put anything into that lock syntax so long as it had the right method on it.
Well, I think that's the problem. Is like I think that there's, from reading into it, is we'd have to go deep on the spec and the implementation. But I believe that if you use the lock class to lock the lock, is it will tell you if you are using that class object, that object you've created elsewhere. So for example, I usually have I create private object lock equals a new object. The problem I think that this solves is that I could use that object or any other object that I've created. Let's say it's a class of Frank. I can new up a new Frank and I lock Frank. The problem is I could use Frank later on in the code, and that could cause problems, right? I think when it comes to it, I think.
Yeah, so much so that I thought it was honestly in the C# analyzers where they bring this up. The rule in .NET, in case you've never heard this rule, this is a hard and fast rule of making objects thread safe. There's more rules, but this is one rule. This is a very important rule. If you lock an object, that is, you use the lock syntax and then you provide an object in the little parentheses there, never, ever, ever expose that object publicly. Never let anyone else ever have access to that object. It should always be a private field that you allocate per object, You can't even lock yourself. You can't lock the this variable. C# will allow it because any object can be locked. But you never, ever want to do that because you can have a deadlock condition where someone else tries to take a lock on you also. They might also use you as a lock. And then if you have a callback, you can create a deadlock. So always the rule in .NET has been whatever object you use in that lock syntax should never be publicly exposed. It should never escape out of the function that it's being used in. So that was just a rule, though. It was never reinforced. I thought there were analyzers for it, but I could be wrong. The neat benefit of them implementing this new lock as a ref struct is they have it has to follow ref struct semantics, and you can't just share those things around. That's not how they work. And they have to stay on the stack, and they can only be transferred through the stack. And therefore, you can never let it escape your function, and therefore, you'll never run into this deadlock condition. It's cute. Neat trick. Make safer code. That's good. I guess use it, but don't use locks. But if you're going to use a lock, use it. If you're going to use locks, use reader-writer lock slim. Then use this, but don't use locks.
Yeah, what is it? Yeah, I need to ask you what's the optimal locking recommendations in the year 2024. Yeah. There's tons of other stuff in here, all sorts of little micro enhancements from collections to cryptography to datetime to diagnostics to some new things in link to some new reflection stuff, some regular expression stuff, some new serialization with JSON text there. But there's tons of stuff in the SDK, in the libraries, in the runtime, lots of optimizations, stuff in ASP.NET Core, stuff in Blazor, stuff in .NET. But actually, if we go back to C#, there's actually the favorite feature of all time that you will unlock. Frank, do you want to explain yourself here?
This is probably the most important feature C# has received in at least 3 months. No, I'm just
that's the name of this episode. The most important feature C# has ever gotten, ever received.
I don't even know how to explain this one, so I'm just gonna go for it. when you're trying to print colorful ANSI art text to the console, you have to type in this weird escape code that I can never remember. It's some hexadecimal thing, or you don't even do it in hex. You do it in octal. Most people write it in octal. It's really creepy, and it's the escape sequence. It's the TTY. I'm gonna control the formatting of the console escape sequence. No one can ever remember it. James, what if I told you in C#13 there's a new character, \E. \E, baby. You type in a \E, you get the escape sequence. You can start typing in your octal digits and start changing the text all sorts of colors. I'm here for it. \E forever.
Boom. It's the C# feature you didn't know you needed, but will change your life forever if you use this, which is a minimal use case. But if you do use it, it's super important.
It's still nasty. You still have to memorize all the ANSI codes, but at least you don't have to remember the escape code, because no one could remember the escape code. I think it's 1B, but it might be B1. I can never remember. What is the escape code?
It's 1B. So yeah. The problem here is that Unicode is U plus 001B, and previously you could use /U001B or /X1B, but using /X1B wasn't recommended because if the next character following 1B were valid hexadecimal digits, those characters would become part of the escape sequence, and then boom, /E will just fix that for you.
Look, they justified the greatest feature ever. They didn't need to justify it. We got it. You didn't need to explain it. You just had to say \E. I got it. I didn't even need the explanation.
It was they needed to explain it for you specifically, Frank. All right, Frank, let's get back to our good friends over at Apple. Let's talk about iOS 18. I have not installed any beta or developed for any beta, but you have, and there's some new things as it relates to dark mode, and not even dark mode, but like, is it the new mono? No, custom dark mode thingy. What's
tint?
the thing?
I believe you're going for tinting.
Tinting.
Mode. Tinting. Yeah, tinting. So this is a little bit of a follow-up because we discussed this 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 episodes ago, and we did a lot of guesswork on Apple is now supporting light mode, dark mode, and tint mode. And new in iOS, it's changing your app icon. And let me tell you, they're doing their best, James. They're doing their best to auto color your icon.
Yeah.
But it ain't good. It's not good, James. You do not, this is a PSA, you do not want Apple changing the color of your icon. It's bad. At least
bad news.
My icons are not coming out very good.
Oh, no.
In the recolorings. They seem to get worse with every beta. But there's good news. There's good news, everyone. There are official ways to now, for every single one of your apps, go and update it and add the new supported icon features, which are, you still want your normal icon, standard, do whatever you want icon, but then you want a dark mode icon. And now here's the trick, because we were talking about layers on how like Android and Windows, you layer your icons.
Yeah.
Well, Apple does now officially support that.
Wow.
So for your dark mode icon, you want to create an all white icon and use transparency where the background should come through. Now, James, you might ask me, well, Frank, how do you provide that background? And I would say, James, because I'm really lost in this dialogue already, you don't. You don't provide the background.
Oh, okay.
Apple provides the background.
Oh.
Apple is the background for you.
Thanks, Apple.
They're wise. They're intelligent. So
you're really just providing that foreground like thing. Then.
Yeah. So now, so it's not like Vision. I mentioned on Vision, you actually get 3 layers, and each layer can have whatever amount of transparency you want. In this case, it really is just the icon itself, and you do everything else transparent. So that's what you're going to want to do for your, I'm sorry, and I might have spoken incorrectly. For your dark icon, you can still use colors, but you use transparency as where the background is going to show up. So you don't render out a background anymore, but you can render out colors and use whatever colors you want. It's a little bit confusing how they handle semi-transparency. So if you do a 50% red, how is that going to render out? Most likely, they're just going to overlay it onto their background, though. But I need to run those kinds of experiments. Now for the tint mode icons, this is where you do provide just a white one because the user is going to provide the tint colors that actually will fill it in with a bit of a gradient, but it's a very subtle gradient. You're not going to notice. It's going to look like a solid color. And again, Apple's going to provide the background. So all you provide is the iconic icon in white. Boy, we've really simplified icons, but I guess that's an okay thing. I don't know. How do you feel about all that?
I don't know. It's like, fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. The thing is, I'm curious about the usage of the tinting and the dark mode of everything being the same. I think the idea of different icons having different colors and different backgrounds is that they stick out more. Like I can easily say, okay, like, oh, I can glance at my screen and say, okay, that's Snapchat, right? There's not that many apps on my phone. If I go to the screen, I open it up, and boom, it's like it's very clear which one's the map app, which one's the Snapchat app, which one's the setting. You know what I mean? It's very clear. I don't have that many apps there, but it's like, oh, it's like very visible.
Yeah.
And you might be saying, okay, well, I want to use this new tint mode. This would be really cool. But I am curious, eventually you'll just get used to it. But is it going to kind of play tricks on your mind a little bit of like actually finding things?
Oh, it does.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it does. Yeah, I can confirm.
Yeah.
I turned on tint mode because it is kind of nice to get that uniformity. It's kind of fun to look over at your phone. I wish they just did it a little better. I wish like it would cycle through colors throughout the day. Like it's red at 5 p.m. Yellow at midnight, or I don't know.
It could follow the hue of like the
stuff
thing.
like that. Right. And I like the uniformity because honestly, the screen can look a little circus sometimes. We use color for distinction. Try not to use it for identification, but we are losing that distinctive element of it. And that's why it's even more important now that your icon be iconic, especially because along with these customization settings, you can finally turn off the text on the icon. So it's just the image.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, switching to tinted mode, no text, that's when you're really like, oh, that's when you notice, is an icon iconic? Am I able to actually remember what the stupid X logo looks like these days? Or that's the one I can never find. The other ones I can find pretty fast.
You mean the X logo? That's a X?
Yeah, that logo. Literally the X logo.
Yeah.
But then I did mention my apps look terrible, so they do not look iconic. So I need to go through and use these fancy new icon settings so that when it is, I think people are going to use tint mode. I think that's what I'm trying to say in all this. It's weird, but I think people will use it.
And I bet also because I think iOS is going to start like recommending tint modes based on your background colors and your background photos and other things and customization. So I could definitely see that happening in the long run of things. So that makes a lot of sense. So that's good to know there's at least a new process. This makes sense to me, similar to Android, all this stuff. So I guess I got to go upgrade all my apps and then start to.
Honestly, I think they did it the way we were hoping. The only weird part is no background color, which is weird. Okay,
fascinating.
Fine.
I guess they're like, this is the dark background color. This is happening. All right, last topic. We mentioned a little bit earlier about X / Twitter. But I posted on X that I was going to no longer. I made my account private, and I am no longer signed in on any device to look at X at all. This is part of my I've gone through detoxing phases that we've talked about. Like I tried the feature phones. I'm going to be trying the light phone. I don't have certain apps installed. I didn't even have the X app installed. I didn't have the Twitter app installed for a long time. I think even pre-acquisition, I didn't. I uninstalled it, but I'd go to the website, and I'm obviously work on the website. I don't have Instagram installed. Even though I have a private Instagram account. The funny part is that like what I really wanted was like a private. What I really wanted on X is the ability to have a private account where only mutual follows, like you follow me, I follow you, is who could see it. But the funny part is that I have like 28,000 followers. Anyone that was a follower can see all my posts. So it's like by making it private, it doesn't actually do anything, which is hilarious. But I pinned on there that I'm not logging in, I'm not checking anything. You can follow me and connect with me on LinkedIn, which is there, and also YouTube, which are different mediums. They're not social media. That kind of not social media. They are social media, but like they're not the same type of discussion, which some people, were like, hey, I don't have the discussion. I was like, I haven't really had discussions on Twitter all that much. And it's the problem that I've had with X and Twitter is a little bit of the algorithm, a lot of bit of the ads, and there's just a lot of stuff that I don't want to see in my life. There's a lot of like weird negativity. There's a like too many political ads. There's like too many things that don't feed my soul in a good way, and I just kind of want less life on the internet, and I want to focus in on stuff. So far it's been a few weeks, and it's been great. I think the change to x.com also made it easier to just be like x.com. I was just like X, and I was just like done. I don't know, for some reason the stuff auto.
Oh my God, it worked on you.
Yeah, it did work. You did it, Elon. But I will say that, I think it's great. And I, even though I have a Mastodon, I don't log into Mastodon. I'm on the dotnet group on LinkedIn. You can follow me on LinkedIn, where I post stuff on occasion. Like there's a follow mode. You don't connect with me. I only connect with people that I work with, because it's a professional network. And then you can obviously follow me on YouTube to watch my videos, but it's very different. I guess I'm just looking to be less on the internet.
Okay, interesting. There can be a lot of reasons to get off the internet, so I won't even poke at you. It is tricky though, because the internet is pervasive in our culture now, so everywhere. It's really hard to get away from the internet. So I don't want to sound stubborn, like even you getting away from the internet, you'll come back, hopefully not to Twitter if you don't want to. Like, don't suffer on a social network, people. It's not worth it. Not worth it. Just leave it. I still get a little bit of something out of that one, so I'm still okay there. But if you're not, totes, ditch it. But the internet is so pervasive in our culture. Like you said, you still have to hang out on LinkedIn, even though you don't complain about airplane food on LinkedIn. It's still it's still a place where there are other humans. And if you're desperate, you can, I'm sure it has DMs. You can just DM someone on there. And so we all have a telephone. It's just, do you want a public phone number or not? Like Twitter and social networks are a lot like the newspapers. I remember getting the newspaper as a kid. The majority of stuff you don't want to read. The majority of the newspaper is garbage, and there's only a few things that you read it. It's the same with a social network. The weird thing about a social network is that your friends, that you can DM your friends on it. So we confuse social networks with communication systems too, and they're all conflated with each other. And so it feels weird to leave them, and that's why it's all awkward. But in reality, if we were talking to someone from the 1980s, you're saying like, oh, I unsubscribed from the Times today. Like, okay, yeah, great. Good on you.
Cool. All right. Sounds good.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Like if you give up your phone in your car and you dig a hole in your backyard, I'll start to worry about you, but I don't think you're there yet.
No, I'm not there yet. I think, like you said, like I actually don't have anything. It's not, there were parts of X that I enjoyed, like browsing and seeing different things and different articles and whatnot. But there's lots of parts that I didn't enjoy. So like I had nothing necessarily against it. And like the same thing, it's like it wasn't that Mastodon was like a replacement that I was looking for. I was actually looking for no replacement at the end of the day. It's like, oh, how do I free up a little bit of my brain from this and maybe try to focus it on something else?
Yeah.
Because I will say this, inherently, I am on LinkedIn and YouTube less, right? What I found is that I would be on X historically more, or like I know people that are on like TikTok or Instagram more. I'm not on those. So it's like I can see myself on Twitter more, which is like, well, I'd like to be on it less. So it's the easiest way to really be on it less is to not be on it at all. Now, I didn't delete my account. Let's be clear about that, because X has a policy, which is if you deactivate your account, they delete your account after 30 days. Unlike Instagram, where you can indefinitely deactivate your account, and if you log back in, it reactivates. That's not how Twitter does it. Twitter will delete your account, and I don't want anyone stealing my name on Twitter. So, boom.
Gotta protect that name until you pass. But okay, yeah, gotta protect that name. Yeah, it's. I don't know. Maybe I'm an old curmudgeon, but I feel like every social network's the same, whether it's TikTok or Reddit or, it's the community. We are at the mercy of algorithms. So yeah, some communities you don't like, sub-communities in a community will leak into yours, and that can be annoying or good and all that stuff, and creates all sorts of insane TikTok wars. But I don't know. I guess I feel detached from the algorithm. If the algorithm sends me something like, you should be mad right now. Here's something bad that happened. Be mad right now. Usually I have the 80% of the time I'm able to be like, oh, it's telling me to be mad. I'm not going to be mad right now.
Yeah. Well, this way, when Frank tweets something that upsets everyone, I'm like, I don't know. Not on Twitter. I don't know. So I don't have to pay attention.
I don't do that anymore.
We'll see. You know what I have
on Twitter?
Yeah, I think that, funnily enough, while I'm not a big Redditor, I do appreciate that really Reddit is just like a forum. It's really just forums.
Reddit's it's a forum. It's just old Usenet. And none of this is new. We changed the software interface. It's all the same. It's just Usenet.
But what I like about Reddit, well, I'm not on it a lot at all, but I was looking for a new weather station. You get weather stations for your house. And there's a whole subreddit about weather stations. This is great because if you Google or Bing and just say, oh, what's the best weather station? It's just a bunch of junk.
Yeah.
But if you go to Reddit, there's a bunch of great threads from real human beings that are like, hey, let me tell you about my weather station. That was kind of cool.
You know what benefit Reddit has over Usenet?
What's that?
The internet's 1,000 times bigger than it ever was before. There's so
That's
many
true.
people now that whatever interest you have, there's a subreddit.
Yeah.
Don't you worry.
It's out there.
There's probably two, and they had a fight, and you got to
That's
pick
true.
which sides you want to be on.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. All right, Frank. Well, that's going to do it for this podcast. How do you feel about that?
That was a weird set of topics we covered, but I felt good. I felt like we got a bunch of little things off the plate, and we can get back to discussing important things like why you didn't use the fish shell in your X.
Never. Default terminal is what I use. People can make fun of me later. Well, when you've done 8 years of this podcast, these are the type of topics that you have. So let us know what topics you want. Go to mergeconflict.fm. Hit us up on YouTube. Let us know. That's going to do it for this week's Merge Conflict Zone. Till next time, I'm James Montemagno.
And I'm Frank Kruger. Thanks for watching and listening.
Peace.